Hello and welcome to Written Words. I'm Helen, and in today's video we are going to have a go at writing a poem together. Have you ever written a poem before? And if so, how did you go about it? Or would you like to write a poem but just can't seem to get started? In one of my earlier videos I explained how I go about writing poems. So in this video, instead of just explaining what to do, I'm actually going to do it, and you will have the opportunity to join in with me if you would like to. And then hopefully by the end of the video we'll all have a poem of our own to show for it. So this is how it's going to work. First of all, I'm going to explain a step in the process, and then there will be an opportunity to pause the video for a few minutes so that we can go away and do what it is that I've just explained. So grab a pen and paper. I've got mine here, and my friend Edwin here has got his pencil and paper ready too, and let's get started. I've broken the process down into 5 steps. So step 1 is inspiration and getting started. Inspiration can come from anywhere. It can come from random words, phrases, patterns, ideas, places, writing prompts, anything that pops in your head, anything that you see or hear or think can be the beginning of a poem. And this inspiration can come to you at any time. I usually find that ideas come to me at the most inconvenient times, not when I'm sitting at my desk with pen and paper in my hand, but when I'm out and about, when I'm walking, when I'm driving, when I'm doing housework, an idea will come to me. So it's a good idea to be prepared. Always have something available that you can jot ideas down on, whether that's a notebook and pen or whether it's just the notes app on your phone. So the theme that I've chosen for this video is the sky. The sky is everywhere. Everybody knows the sky. Wherever you are in the world, you have the sky. There are so many different aspects to the sky, and it can inspire so many different thoughts or emotions or ideas. So the first thing we're going to do is to think about the sky. What kind of words, thoughts or images come to mind when you think about the sky? What is your relationship with the sky? How does it affect you, or how do you affect it? So we're now going to take about 5 minutes to scribble down random ideas. At this point, we're not attempting to write a poem. At this point, it's just about getting ideas down on paper. Don't try at this point to make it make sense. Don't try to arrange it in any kind of structure. Just write down random words, anything that comes into your head when you think of the sky. Perhaps try using your 5 senses. What can you see? What can you hear? What can you feel, taste or smell? You don't have to use all 5 senses, but it's sometimes helpful to use more than one so that you get different angles. What does the sky symbolize? Is it attached to any memories for you? So just anything that comes into your head when you think about sky, pour it all out onto a piece of paper for the next 5 minutes. I will do the same, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. Welcome back. How did you get on? Here's how I got on. I've got quite a few ideas scribbled down there, but nothing resembling a poem in the slightest so far. So now we move on to the next stage, which is spotting patterns. And this is perhaps one of my favourite parts of writing a poem, because so far all the notes are just random thoughts, random ideas, random words with nothing connecting them. So now we're going to look at what we've written. We're going to read through it and think about it. And we're going to see if we can spot any patterns. Is there some kind of theme emerging in there? Is there some kind of story or scene hidden in there that can form the main body of the poem? When I was writing the poems in my poetry collection, one of my poems was written in a vineyard. I went for a walk around the vineyard and came back and made my notes. And then when I read through the notes afterwards, I could see that there was a very musical theme emerging. So I made my poem about the music of the vineyard. Another of the poems in my collection is about a river, and I was writing about a day in the life of a river. And as I looked through the notes I'd made about the river, I could see there was a theatrical theme coming through there. It was as if every day in the life of the river was another scene in a play, and the river itself was playing the leading role in the play. So I took advantage of that and used the theatrical theme as part of the poem. I wrote a poem about a bird, and as I read through my notes I realised that the word feathers cropped up a lot, and the more I thought about it, the more I realised if I use that word a lot in the poem, feathers, 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 feathers sounds very similar to the sound of a bird's wings fluttering. So for the next 5 minutes, let's go back to our notes and have a look at them. Perhaps have a different colour pen handy so that you can circle things, highlight things, add things, cross things out. You might like to take a new piece of paper and shuffle your ideas round, change the order of them, put things together that go together because they're part of the same theme, and arrange the things on the page so that you can start to see a story or a pattern emerging. Hello again. Did you spot any patterns or themes or stories emerging from your notes? My notes are now 2 pages. I scribbled some red pen over my first page and I started making some more structured notes on the second page as I saw some patterns emerging. So let's move on to stage 3. Stage 3 is tools. And this is the bit where we start to turn our notes into something that resembles a poem. First of all, a question which I've asked in previous videos is, should poetry rhyme? So here are a few thoughts on whether poetry should rhyme. My feeling is that rhyme is just one of the many tools that are available to a poet. A poem is a kind of music written with words. So a poem needs to have some kind of musical quality, some kind of musicality. But how you achieve that is up to you. When you're cooking, for example, you can fry the ingredients, but you can also roast them, bake them, boil, grill, or many other methods depending on how you want the food to taste. And it's the same with poetry. So rhyme is one tool, but there are lots of others as well. And it's up to you to decide which tools and which combination of tools you want to use for your poem. So in addition to rhyme, here are some of the other tools that are available to poets. There is rhythm. The rhythm of a poem can be very important. There are certain types of poetry that require specific rhythms. And some poems have very interesting rhythms that create a very interesting effect. If you think, for example, of From a Railway Carriage by Robert Louis Stevenson, the one that goes faster than fairies, faster than witches, bridges than houses, hedges and ditches, you can almost feel as if you're in a railway carriage because you can feel the rhythm of the wheels on the tracks through the rhythm of the poem. Then there is imagery. There are lots of different ways to use imagery. So here are a few. You can use similes. A simile is when you're comparing something to something else, and usually using the words like or as. So, for example, my love is like a red, red rose, from the Robert Burns poem. Then we have metaphor, which is similar to the simile. It's comparing something to something else. But with a metaphor, the writer says that something is something else. So instead of saying my love is like a red, red rose, a metaphor would be to say my love is a red, red rose. And then there is personification, which I do rather enjoy. It's when the poet or a writer takes something that is inanimate and portrays it as if it was a person. For example, I wrote a poem called Enough, which is about war. And it takes the objects involved in wars, such as boots, helmets, tanks and bombs, and the objects themselves speak and comment on what is going on. And then there is a category that I like to call fancy things with words, ways to play around with words. And that includes things like alliteration. I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about writing my poem about a bird and how I used the word feathers a lot, because the repetition of the word feathers and fluttering and flapping creates the effect of a bird's wings fluttering. And then there is onomatopoeia, which is similar. Onomatopoeia is a word that sounds like the thing it is describing. So, for example, bang sounds like what it is describing, or click, or many animal sounds are often onomatopoeic. And then there are made-up words. Lewis Carroll, for example, is very good at that. There is no rule that says that every word in your poem has to be in the dictionary. You can make some up if they fit the context. Then you can use things like contrast. You can put two things alongside each other that are complete opposites. You can play around with structure, and along with that comes repetition. In a song, for example, you would have a verse and a chorus and a verse and a chorus, and the chorus keeps coming back and being repeated, and you can do similar things in poems. So those are just a few of the tools that are available to a poet that help to give the poem a musical quality. So now, because we're getting to the nitty-gritty of poetry itself, we're going to take a slightly longer break. I recommend we pause now for about 10 minutes. And in that time, look back over your notes and think about all the different tools that are available to you. Which ones are you going to use? How are you going to use them? Do any of them just naturally fit into the notes you've already written? Is there some rhyme in there? Is there a specific rhythm to some of the words? Are there certain words that all repeat the same sound? Or do your notes personify something? So now let's take 10 minutes to see if we can use some of those tools to gently mould our notes into something that is starting to resemble the beginnings of a poem. How's it going now? Is your poem starting to acquire some kind of shape to it? Is it starting to go somewhere? It's probably a very long way from finished. There's still a lot of work to do on it, but hopefully by now you will have the beginnings of something that has some kind of potential structure. The next stage in our poem writing journey is to read it aloud. Probably at the moment you won't have a huge amount finished yet, but you will have something that you can keep tinkering with and keep tweaking as you go along. But so far everything is written down. A poem, though, should sound good when it's read aloud. How will we know what its musical quality is like if we don't read it aloud? So it's always a good idea when you're writing a poem at some stage to read it out aloud. And by feeling the words in your mouth and hearing the sounds that they produce, you might find some things that you want to adjust to make its musicality shine through. So in our next pause, we're going to take 5 minutes again to read what we have so far aloud. Read it aloud to an imaginary audience. How does it feel to read it? Is there something that doesn't quite trip off the tongue as comfortably as it might? And how can you change that to make it feel better? Of course, when your poem is closer to completion, then this is a stage to revisit and read the whole thing. And you will probably keep finding things that you want to just adjust slightly to make it sound good when it's read aloud. So let's all read our poems to our imaginary audiences, and I'll see you in 5 more minutes. So how did that go? Did you find some parts of your poem that you really rather liked when you read it aloud? Did you find some things that you wanted to change? This is only a very short video, so there's probably still a lot of work that we can do on our poems before we're happy with them and feel ready to share them. It's possible to play around ad infinitum, tweaking things and changing things and altering things, but eventually there comes a time when you have to decide enough is enough, and then you can share it in some way. So stage 5 of our poetry writing process is, what can you do with your poems? So here's just a few ideas of things that you could do with your poems. You could put them in greetings cards to family and friends. It's quite a nice personal touch. If I were to receive a poem from a loved one in a greetings card, I would think that was rather lovely. You could type your poem up and print it out, or write it out by hand and put it on a wall or put it in a frame. I have a little selection of some of my poems that I've printed out and put in frames, which I use to put on my stall when I'm doing in-person events. You could share your poem on social media or set up a blog where you can put your poems so that other people can see them. If you are of a musical persuasion, you could set it to music and make it into a song. Or if you know someone else who is musical, you could share it with them and see if they feel inspired to make it into a song. If you're feeling very brave, you could consider going to an open mic event. They are becoming increasingly popular, and it's a very good way to share your poems with other poetry lovers, as well as hearing other people's poems and seeing what kind of things they write. If you have a lot of poems, you could collect them together in a book, whether that's a book that you publish in some way, or whether it's just a handwritten book that you want to keep to enjoy going back and reading your poetry or sharing with family and friends. And when you've finished your poem that you've written along with me in this video, feel free to share it in the comments here or on the Written Words Facebook page. I'd be very interested to read your versions of this sky poem. So my poem has now made it to 3 sheets of paper. I've highlighted 1 or 2 bits that I'm rather pleased about. I came up with the phrase mutual gazing, which I quite like. I've got a little bit of personification in there. I've got some metaphor. I think my poem is starting to take the form of a letter to the sky. So I'm personifying the sky and writing a letter to it. So I'm going to go away now and tinker with that some more, and we'll see how that turns out. And in my next video, I will share the finished poem along with 1 or 2 other poems by some well-known and well-loved poets on the theme of the sky. Just before I finish, I'll just mention some of my books. If you enjoyed writing along with this video, you might enjoy A Month of Writing Ideas, which is exactly what it says it is. It's a collection of writing prompts. And there are 31 writing prompts. So there's one for every day of the month if you want to build up a writing habit. And each prompt also comes with a quote from classic literature as well. Then there is my collection Endless Procession, and this is a collection of my poetry. So some of the poems that I've mentioned in this video and in previous videos are in here. And then finally there is Sentimental Tales, which is my translation of some of the short stories and poems of a Russian writer, Nikolai Karamzin, and some of his contemporaries as well. So it contains my translations of short stories and poems, but there are also a couple of my own poems in here as well. Thank you very much for joining me in this video. I hope you've enjoyed joining me on this journey through the process of writing a poem, and I hope you carry on enjoying writing poetry, finishing off the one that you've written in this video, and hopefully enjoying writing lots more in the future. As I mentioned, my next video will be sharing the poem that I've written in this video. So I look forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, happy reading and happy writing.